The number one most misunderstood thing happening in your gut right now is what refined protein is doing to your microbiome. And I know protein? Refined protein? What on earth am I even talking about? Stick with me for 2 minutes, because this is going to completely change how you look at that protein bar you're eating, that shake you're drinking, and those high-protein snacks filling the grocery store shelves right now. We've spent decades figuring out what refined sugar does to the human body. We took sugarcane, this whole complex food, stripped everything useful out of it, and turned it into pure glucose with nothing left to protect you from it. And we know how that story ended. Well, right now, we are doing the exact same thing to protein, and almost nobody is talking about it. The protein supplement industry is worth over $50 billion a year, and they have absolutely no interest in you hearing what I am about to tell you. Because what the research is now showing is that isolated, refined protein, the kind in almost every supplement on the market, is not hitting your body the same way protein from whole food does. Not even close. And the difference is not calories. It is not amino acid profiles. It is something happening in your gut that the industry has never had to think about. Until now. Okay, so let's start with what protein actually is inside a whole food. When you eat a piece of wild salmon, or a handful of lentils, or a pasture-raised egg, you are not just eating amino acids. That protein is packaged inside a cellular structure, a food matrix that is physically bound to fats, minerals, enzymes, and a group of compounds called bioactive peptides. These are tiny protein fragments that your body uses as signaling molecules. They don't just build muscle, they talk to your immune system, they talk to your gut lining, they regulate inflammation, and critically, they talk to your gut microbiome. Now here's what's fascinating. These bioactive peptides and the protein they're attached to are meant to be consumed as a unit. They travel through your digestive system together. And when they reach your gut microbiome, this community of trillions of organisms living in your colon, the microbes receive this whole package and know exactly what to do with it. They've evolved over millions of years to process exactly this kind of protein signal. The protein provides the fuel. The bioactive peptides and cofactors provide the instructions. Who processes what? How fast? Which bacterial species get activated, and which ones get suppressed? Think of your gut like a very sophisticated factory floor. Okay? There are hundreds of different departments. Each one specializes in something different. When whole food protein walks in the front door, it comes with a full set of instructions. The right departments activate. The wrong ones stand down. Everything runs in an organized way. That's what's supposed to happen. And for most of human history, that is exactly what happened. Because the only protein that existed came from whole food. So now let's talk about what the protein supplement industry actually does when it makes that powder. Because the process is very revealing. To get to a pure isolated protein, whether that's whey isolate, pea protein isolate, soy protein isolate, casein, they have to break apart the food matrix I just described. They use a combination of heat, acid, or alkaline treatments, and mechanical processing to separate the protein from everything else. The fats go, the minerals are largely lost, the enzymes are destroyed by the heat, and those bioactive peptides, many of them are denatured, which means their structure is changed so fundamentally that they no longer function as signaling molecules at all. What you are left with is a very high concentration of amino acids, and yes, your body can use those amino acids to build muscle. I am not saying protein isolates have zero value, but you are no longer delivering protein the way your microbiome evolved to receive it. You are sending fuel to the factory floor with no instruction manual. A researcher at the University of Reading, Dr. Ian Givens, who has published extensively on dairy protein and metabolic health, put it this way, and I'm paraphrasing because this is important. The food matrix that surrounds nutrients in whole food is not just packaging, it is functional. It changes how the body processes what's inside it. Remove the matrix, and you change the biological outcome, even if the macronutrient numbers on the label look identical. And now, here is what really gets me. Because the same industry that is selling you this refined protein is also responding to the growing awareness around gut health. So now you see products that say added probiotics, or gut-friendly, right on the same label as 20 g of isolated protein. They are stripping out the compounds that naturally direct your microbiome and then adding back a few billion bacteria as a marketing claim. That is not how this works. Now here is where the research starts to get genuinely important, because this is not speculation anymore. There is a growing body of peer-reviewed evidence, specifically looking at isolated versus whole food protein and what each does to your gut ecosystem. And some of these findings are things the protein industry is not going to be thrilled about. A 2023 study published in the journal Gut, one of the most respected gastroenterology journals in the world, followed two groups of adults over 8 weeks. One group increased their protein intake using whole food sources, eggs, legumes, fish and dairy, in its whole form. The other group matched their protein intake gram for gram, using commercially available protein isolate powders. Both groups hit the same daily protein targets, same grams, same amino acid profiles on paper. The gut microbiome results were dramatically different. The whole food group showed significant growth in beneficial bacterial species, particularly those associated with short-chain fatty acid production, which is the fuel your colon lining depends on. The isolate group, they showed an increase in putrefactive bacteria. These are species that thrive on undigested protein residue reaching the colon, and their metabolic byproducts include compounds associated with colorectal inflammation. In chronic exposure studies in animal models, increased colorectal cancer risk. Now, and I want to be precise about this, because precision matters, this was an 8-week human trial, not a lifetime study. We are not saying protein powder causes cancer. What we are saying is that the microbiome response to isolated protein is measurably significantly different from the microbiome response to whole food protein. And the direction of that difference is not neutral. It is not something you should be comfortable ignoring, especially if you are consuming large amounts of protein isolate every single day. So let me walk you through exactly what happens in your gut when you consume large amounts of refined protein isolate over time. There are 3 things, and each one makes the next one worse. 1. The wrong bacteria take over. Without the bioactive peptides that act as directional signals for the microbiome, the protein becomes indiscriminate fuel. The bacterial species best equipped to ferment excess protein, putrefactive bacteria, outcompete the beneficial species that your gut health depends on. This is not dramatic or immediate. It is a slow compositional shift over weeks and months. But that shift changes what your gut produces, what signals it sends to your immune system, and how well your gut lining holds together. 2. Fermentation happens in the wrong place. Whole food protein is processed slowly. The food matrix slows gastric emptying, gives your small intestine time to absorb amino acids efficiently, and only allows a small residue to reach the colon where it belongs. Refined isolate hits your system fast, too fast. A significant portion passes through the small intestine before it can be fully absorbed. It arrives in the colon in quantities. The bacterial ecosystem was not designed to handle all at once. The result is a fermentation overload. And with overloaded fermentation comes gas, bloating, inflammation, and in chronic cases, changes to the mucosal lining of the gut itself. 3. The gut lining pays the price. The short-chain fatty acids produced by healthy bacterial fermentation of fiber and whole food compounds are the primary fuel source for your colonocytes, the cells that line your colon. When putrefactive bacteria crowd out the short-chain fatty acid producers, your colon lining starts to run on a fuel deficit. Colonocytes begin to weaken. Tight junctions, the microscopic seals between colon cells, start to loosen, and this is where we arrive at something you may have heard of: intestinal permeability, leaky gut. When the lining compromises, inflammatory bacterial fragments can enter the bloodstream, systemic inflammation follows, and the downstream effects reach your joints, your brain, your skin, and your metabolic health. So what do you do with all of this? Here is what I want you to take away, and I want to be very clear that this is not about demonizing protein or telling you to eat less of it. Protein is essential. The amino acids are real. The muscle-building effects of a high-protein diet are well supported. What I am saying is that where your protein comes from and what comes with it matters enormously for your microbiome and your long-term gut health. Stop chasing gram targets with refined protein. If you are hitting 150 grams of protein a day, but most of it comes from isolate powders and high-protein bars, your microbiome is absorbing the cost of that. More grams is not always better if the source is stripping out the compounds that protect your gut. Stop treating the label as the whole story. A protein bar that says 18 grams of protein and lists pea protein isolate as the first ingredient is not the same thing as 18 grams of protein from whole lentils. The number is the same. The biological outcome is not. Start building meals around whole food protein sources, eggs with vegetables, lentil dishes, fatty fish, 2 to 3 times a week, fermented dairy like kefir or full-fat yogurt. These give you amino acids and the food matrix that directs how your microbiome processes them. Both together, the way your gut evolved to receive them. Start adding fermented foods alongside your protein. Kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, miso, these directly support the bacterial populations that refined protein suppresses. Think of them as the corrective signal your microbiome needs if it has been running on isolate for a long time. If you use a protein supplement, look for the least processed option. Whole food protein blends that include the food matrix. Some newer products made from minimally processed whole egg, salmon, or legume powders are meaningfully different from isolated fractions. They cost more, but your microbiome is worth it. So here is the summary. Protein is not just amino acids. In whole food, protein comes packaged with a food matrix, bioactive peptides, cofactors, and signaling compounds that your gut microbiome evolved over millions of years to receive. Refined protein isolates strip that matrix away in the same way we stripped fiber and vitamins away from refined sugar. What you are left with is pure fuel, with no instruction manual. And without those instructions, your microbiome does not run the way it should. The wrong bacteria take over. Fermentation happens in the wrong place. Your gut lining pays the price, and the downstream effects reach far beyond your digestive system. The protein industry is not going to tell you any of this, because the business model depends on you believing that grams on a label are all that matters. They are not. I want to know, are you currently using a protein supplement? Put it in the comments. Tell me what you're taking and how much, because after this video I think some of you are going to go look at that label very differently. And that is exactly the point.